Okay, we're delighted to welcome Sharon Cittone. She's the founder and CEO of Edible Planet Ventures, a global thought leader in the intersection of food innovation, investment, and sustainability. Sharon has her finger firmly on the pulse of the alternative protein landscape, and we're excited to tap into her insights on where the sector really stands today, what needs to shift, and what gives her hope for the future of food. Sharon, welcome to Protein Production Technology International.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you with us. You're deeply embedded in the global food innovation space. Before we dive into specifics, could you give us your current pulse check on the alt protein landscape? Where are we really at today, beyond the headlines that we're seeing?
Well, we're sort of at a critical reset phase, right? Like we've seen the initial hype cycle with, the gazillion dollar fundraising, and that definitely has subsided for several reasons, which I believe we'll dive in a little bit later into this interview. You'll have to excuse my dog in the background. Um,
I have two next to me, so I'm just hoping they're going to be good.
um, but I do believe that it wasn't correct, let's say, to just have all this money thrown in. I think what we are seeing now, it's a more pragmatic landscape with immense potential, but the conversation has shifted, right? How do we deliver these alternative proteins? So it's not just about vision, but it's really about execution, whether it's their commercial scalability, commercial ability. Um, and so we're moving into sort of this more grounded, consumer centric, maybe aspect of it with definitely more operational resilience.
Mhm. Looking back over the past few years, what do you think were the biggest misconceptions or missteps in the sector, and what's the opportunity now to rethink or reframe strategies?
So I think a few. Definitely one was that we maybe underestimated the complexity of the consumer adoption, right?
Mhm.
So the assumption maybe was that people just switched based on novelty or sustainability alone. Um, and that's not the case. Another one was maybe over indexing on the tech aspect. But nobody wants to eat food, made from necessarily a scientist, right? Like that's not what you think when you think about food, because food is an experience, but it's your culture, right? It's tradition, it's culinary quality, and especially its affordability. Um, so the idea that this is not just a tech solution, right? But it's food. And so we have seen the importance of moving towards, taste, nutrition, texture, consumer trust. Um, and so making sure that that messaging catches up, wanting a delicious product. And it's not, as I said before, it's not about make your planet better, right? Because at the end of the day, people just want a good product that's good for them, that they can pay for. And so, the sustainability aspect might come second into their mind.
Mhm.
But I also think that probably the most damaging error was really the messaging. So two things happen. One, and it goes a little bit back to the sustainability aspect, was making people that ate meat feel bad. And that created sort of a very polarizing dynamic, not
Mhm.
just with the consumer, but also with the industry, with the meat industry. We are going to take over, we are going to revolutionize, right? So without putting farmers at the center of the conversation, then you start to see years later all these bans coming up. instead of going to farmers and say, this is a real opportunity for you to diversify production. Look, the climate crisis is real. You're feeling it. Um, and this is a good opportunity for you to get into something new, not to eliminate what you're doing because you're bad, but just because you're going to make more money.
Yeah.
And that, I think, it's a message that would have stuck, right? But we created that polarizing, um, I would say, uh, situation in a very polarized world that, has given us a little bit of issues.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, we're seeing a different attitude, I think, in Europe at the moment. Certainly, there is a keenness to involve the farming community and the ag sector in certainly cultivated meat. Now, you talked before about the investment climate shifting. What are you hearing from investors? What's driving caution, and where are they still seeing opportunity?
So obviously, the caution, well, we have seen, these very inflated, a few years ago, inflated valuation, but also, it takes a long time to commercialize, let's say, cultivated meat, right? Like, and that was a thing. You're banning something that it's not even at scale. It takes time. So investments are long term. It's not something that, you'll have a near term revenue, which is maybe what investors were more used to. It's definitely so investors want to see more capital efficiency. I've seen and go to market clarity. I think we have seen some of the mistakes that were made from some companies. But there's still a lot of appetite. I mean, we're seeing it with, for example, all these enabling technologies, precision fermentation. I mean, every week there's deals, um, ingredient platforms, definitely B2B models. So again, I think also there is an interest, or not just with the climate aspect of it, but also with health, nutrition, food security, right? It's a broader conversation, but investors want to see something that it's definitely more tangible.
Mhm. So we're probably seeing smarter money now. How are the expectations of investors evolving, especially in terms of timelines, scalability, or even routes to profitability?
Yeah, I think it's just more disciplined capital, right? It's de-risking. They want to de-risk scale-up strategies. They want, proof of traction, a realistic timelines. So it's not just a technical validation, but also, looking at partnerships, the regulatory aspect, what are the potential sales. So there's more scrutiny on unit economics, whether companies can scale without endless capital infusions.
Mhm. How important are specialist funds or mission-driven capital in supporting this next phase of growth for the sector? Is generalist VC money still a fit?
I mean, they may still play a role, especially in later stages, but I think the sort of specialized mission-driven capital is more critical than ever, because obviously you understand the nuances of the industry, the regulatory paths, the infrastructure needs, and the consumer education aspect of it.
Mhm.
So you're in it, right? Um, but we still need to be patient. Knowledgeable capital that isn't, we need capital that isn't necessarily spooked, right, by longer timelines.
Mhm. We've seen consumer priorities shift from sustainability to health, price, even convenience. So, what are some of the biggest consumer behavior changes that you're tracking, and how are they shaping product development and messaging?
Price was always a driver and will remain a driver. But I think health, as I said, but also before, has become really a top driver. Consumer want, the clean labels, ingredients that they recognize. They want maybe that added functionality, um, quality of the protein, digestive health. So, we also see a growing fatigue with UPFs, which is really helping companies to rethink formulations, dependency on isolates, and align better onto the whole, maybe wellness, food as medicine sort of narrative.
Mhm. Do you think the sector has in any way underestimated the complexity of consumer trust and food culture? What's needed now to reconnect with those mainstream consumers?
Well, yeah, without a doubt. Because I mean, food isn't just right fuel, right? As I said, it's tradition, culture, it's emotional. I mean, who doesn't have a piece of chocolate when they're a little down, right? So many brands sort of fail to recognize how much uh, food is really, rooted into that, right? Like that transparency and culinary legitimacy. So what we need now is not just better storytelling, but better listening. So
Mhm.
we need to put the, chefs, nutritionists, local communities together. I mean, these people are key, and consumers are key to creating products that people genuinely want, not just what we think they want, right? Um, and so that's what we need to do.
I've only been working in this sector for about 3 years now. There's been a noticeable pivot in messaging around alternative proteins, even in that time. Why do you think the sustainability narrative has lost traction, and how are leading companies adjusting their communication strategies, in your view?
Well, no, not everybody's an activist. At the end of the day, I mean, obviously there is a group of us where sustainability is important, but it's, for many, it's not more important than, taste or price, or their health. And we are seeing it with this whole GLP-1 sort of frenzy, right? Like, so and also we framed it like wasn't just save the planet, it was almost punitive. And for us that's been here like for the past 12 years, it was in a way made you feel bad if you weren't on board, right? So we just have to, sort of change the narrative. It's like, what's in it for you? What's in it for the consumer, right? It's an affordable product. It's a delicious product. It's a fun product. You'll enjoy it. Every bit will be, an adventure. It's healthy. And that, obviously you can integrate the climate benefits into that, but you're putting the consumer in the middle and not as sort of an afterthought.
Mhm. You've worked with a lot of startups, I would imagine, over the past decade or more. What advice would you give them um, when it comes to struggling to tell a clear story, especially when the science is complex and the benefits are long term?
Storytelling is key. So obviously, this could be a whole other podcast, right? But um, use digestible human terms, right? With metaphors and visuals or, analogies that make sense. Don't anchor your story in a gazillion little pieces, but what is that one thing that really stands out? Um, and try to be a partner with your audience. And also find partnerships, maybe chefs or doctors or early adopters, so that you can make sure that it resonates, that your story resonates with everybody and not just with, investors or media alone.
Mhm. That's a good moment to move on to partnerships. Some of the most exciting progress seems to come from unexpected relationships between corporates and startups or across disciplines. What types of collaborations are you seeing that are truly moving the needle?
Well, those are driving real change. I mean, we have seen a lot of traditional sort of dairy players um, use and partner with startups on precision fermentation. We have seen, I mean, one that I could name also in terms of a lot of capital deployed was Cargill with Voyage Foods, really helping them build their manufacturing. Or also the use of really AI into helping the optimization and R&D cycles. Um, Public-private models, obviously, the Netherlands, what they're doing, Singapore is a great example. And blended capital, sort of that frame, right? So proving that you can share risk and also unlock faster innovation. I think we are seeing different models and all very valid.
Mhm. Kind of related to that, do you think we're doing enough to connect the dots between food tech, public health, and climate strategies, or are we still operating in silos to an extent?
We're still too siloed. Yeah, it's been a battle of mind. I mean, the food system is deeply interconnected as a system for a reason, but most innovation still happens in verticals. We are missing the sort of real systemic thinking, shared language. We don't even have shared standards. So that, in itself, it's a problem. So we need that between, food, climate, nutrition, and cultural sort of understanding. We need more platforms that bridge these worlds and really make that collaboration seamless.
Mhm. Now, we're a technology magazine, so we're going to talk about technology and scaling now. From your perspective, Sharon, what tech breakthroughs are proving most critical in helping alternative proteins scale affordably, whether it's bioprocessing or AI or precision fermentation or even innovations in the supply chain?
Well, in a way, all of the above, right? I mean, precision fermentation continues to be something that we see a lot. AI obviously has taken hold on pretty much every aspect of from farm to fork and beyond. Um, Obviously, cost and scale remain major barriers of some of these technologies. But just this past week, for example, we are also seeing how, companies like precision fermentation companies then are introducing tech platforms. So this past week, Food Tech, launched Albatross, their AI sort of system. But we're also seeing this sort of shift or pivot like Heura, what was it, like in November they launched themselves sort of as a tech platform, right? So from meat to creating pretty much any food using their technologies. So we are seeing also an evolution from startups continuing to integrate new technologies within maybe their own, sort of core technology. And then obviously supply chain innovation. We understand how sort of the manufacturing and ingredient sourcing is still key to truly unlocking affordability.
Mhm. In terms of scaling, is it the science that needs more time or the infrastructure that's holding back commercial scale, or is maybe a bit of both?
Yeah, definitely both. Infrastructure is definitely one of the most urgent bottlenecks, and I think we've seen in the past few years how certain companies have been trying to come up with sort of models for that. But obviously, a startup might also be ready to scale, obviously, but if you don't have, pilot or, facilities tailored to whatever it is that you're doing, that's going to be a real challenge, right? And then we need, investments, I think, to be modular, of, have that flexible sort of infrastructure that can support uh multiple modalities and really shorten that path, right, from lab to market.
Mhm. Um, You have a truly global view, Sharon. How are national strategies in places such as Singapore, the Netherlands, or the USA influencing what gets funded and what gets built?
I mean, obviously, I think one of the things that we don't talk enough about is policy. Right? Such a critical driver of innovation. You can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't have policies that, sort of make it viable, it's not going to go anywhere. So Singapore obviously continues to lead with its cohesive strategy, um, whether it's with public funding, streamlining processes, creating sort of infrastructure. So that's been a test bed, right, really for the alternative protein sector. But we are also seeing, sort of what the UK in the past, year and a half has been moving quite quickly. And so that sort of that increasing government attention and funding then streamlines, and we have seen examples of that towards sort of the biotech or food innovation hubs and stuff. Netherlands, I think, has some great examples um, of sort of how they, uh, you know, how they put together sort of the public-private partnership or academic industry collaboration, whether with beginning in and the Dutch government in general. And the U.S., I think, which was sort of oh, the market that I think most of these companies, especially like Europe, you knew that you could get self-affirmed grass pretty easily in a way in the US, but I'm afraid that at the moment, it's losing a little bit of its momentum. There's still obviously a lot of innovation, and there have been great initiatives like the biomanufacturing grants that were going on for the past 4 years were great. We have seen that partnership, for example, Liberation Labs with USDA and private funding, so the blended financing sort of to build that manufacturing capability. But at the moment, with the regulatory uncertainty and how political everything is becoming, we'll see where the U.S. will stand, which I think also that it's a great opportunity uh, for other countries to sort of emerge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. That's the topic of an entirely different podcast,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Uh, now, in terms of infrastructure and ecosystem building, how important do you think it is to have dedicated infrastructure from pilot facilities to scale-up hubs in supporting those startups beyond just capital? Are we building enough of it now? Are we building enough of it fast enough?
Hmm. No, I think we need to build more because it's absolutely essential. You can have all the talent and all the money in the world, but if you don't have a place where you can actually get products to market, what's the point? And right now we're not building fast enough. So that's what we're also seeing, maybe startups fail, sort of between that sort of, lab to truly, scale commercial production. We need more facilities, hubs, you know, where we can truly start to scale and manufacture alternative proteins um, in a serious manner so that we can reduce, cost.
Mhm. Are you seeing any new models for public-private partnerships or innovation ecosystems that could serve as blueprints for the rest of the world?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there are examples out there of, what's possible when ecosystems can align around innovation. And we talked about Singapore. We talked a little bit about Liberation Labs in the US, for example. We have seen what in North Carolina, right? It started with the North Carolina Food Innovation Lab, and then the base of Sustainable Protein Center. So that whole area really became an ecosystem that truly a gold standard, I would say, for protein production because of the way initiatives and startups and piloting and everything, really started to work. But we need more than that, right? We don't need, like examples. We need at scale, projects like this, and that they talk to each other, because what happens in one country, could be helpful in another. So not isolated, I would say, examples, but we need, again, models that are truly systemic. And that takes a lot of multi-stakeholder coordination. We need definitely a little bit more agility from our policymakers, real frameworks, and really a different infrastructures, right? From startup to scale up.
Mhm. Now, I would imagine that you are not a gambler, but if you had to bet on one thing that would most accelerate alt protein adoption in the next 5 years, what do you think that would be, Sharon?
Well, ingredients really that are affordable, and that elevate that taste and nutrition without driving cost, right? So we need to crack that while keeping margins realistically. And I think adoption will follow. Um, Tech is the enabler, but affordability and quality are still key.
Mhm. And finally, what gives you most optimism right now about the future of food, despite all the challenges that we're seeing and that we've discussed today?
I think the fact that we are definitely asking better questions, we're having more honest conversations and collaborations. Um, we're it's happening, right? It's no longer theoretical. It's not, uh, you know, something that will be in 2050. It's happening now. So I think we are just getting better year after year at, acknowledging the mistakes and trying to correct them to truly build long-term resilience.
Mhm. Look, Sharon, it's been wonderful talking with you. It's really nice to put a voice to the face after all this time. I just wish you all the luck in the world, and yeah, can't wait to meet you properly.
Oh, definitely. I'd love that. Have a good one.